Rishita, and on this channel, every week we speak with entrepreneurs and the best of talent from the startup industry. Um, and today we have a very special guest with us who I do consider and is considered by many to be an expert, a mentor in Web3. He has been the former head of the blockchain and cryptocurrency committee, which, as part of the Internet and Mobile Association of India, is the country's foremost industry body for cryptocurrency. Earlier, in his role as CEO of ZepPay, which was India's largest cryptocurrency exchange at that time, he took it from being a one country exchange to a global one. As CEO of the Business Incubator at IIT Bombay, he has helped commercialize several ideas from the concept stage. He is Ajeet. I think you're on speaker. All right, thank you. Maybe help in any way with the login or setting up this call for you. All right, we'll continue. So he has also been the CEO of the Business Incubator at IIT Bombay. He is also an advisor to various venture capital firms across the globe. He is a two-time entrepreneur, a published author of several books. He has taught at the University of Texas at Austin. He is an investor himself, and he is the founder of Reflexical. Welcome, Ajeet. I am so grateful to have you here today to discuss what we are going to discuss. We can't hear you, Ajeet.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. I will not disconnect from here.
Oh, wonderful. You're here.
This is better, right? Yeah, I'm very happy to
Yes.
join you. And sorry for the technical, even in this day and age to have technical difficulties is a little embarrassing, but what can I say? Here we are.
Yeah, here we are, and that's what matters. And thank you so much for being here. And I was just reading up yesterday that 70% of people surveyed last year on LinkedIn said they don't understand what Web3 is. Uh, Consider myself to be a part of that 70%. So, my first thing I want to know is what is Web3 that everyone's been talking about?
So, since that is not first, if 70% of the people said that they don't understand Web3, that
Mhm.
means 30% of the people are liars.
See, oh,
what
this is so validating.
what I mean is that Web3 at its core is a way of thinking.
Mhm.
Okay. So what tends to happen is that each of us is operating in Web3 as what do you say, a nine blind men and the elephant, which means we all have our version of Web3. So permissionless, smart contract driven, transparent, open, democratized, distributed governance, distributed consensus, distributed incentives. All of these are characteristics of Web3,
All
right?
right.
But they are not Web3. It is like if I ask, who is Rishita, right? So you will say, I am Rishita. Well, we can't disagree. But I say, show me Rishita. Now, the moment you will show anything, like we will say, okay, this is Rishita. I'll say, no, that is Rishita's hand. If you say, this is Rishita, say, no, that is Rishita's face. That is not Rishita. So Web3 is a concept. Web3's concept is very, very simple. If you think about any structure in the world, by structure we could talk about family, we could talk about educational institution, we could talk about government, religion, we could talk about a relationship, marriage, or any of these social constructs that we create, social or even commercial constructs like a company, etc. If I say, okay, what is common between all such structures, in reality it could be boiled down to two things. One is a system of governance. So in a
Mm-hmm.
country, there is a rule of law. In a company, there is a Companies Act, and then there is a articles of incorporation. Right? In a family, there might be a unwritten rule, etc. So this is the system of governance. And second is how money flows through the system. So instead of calling it a system of economics, I'll take a small part of it and call it system of incentives, right? So in the country, we country gives us certain opportunity to earn money. When we earn money, they take some part of it as tax. Likewise with the company, etc. So all structures, while this is a slightly oversimplified method, could be broken into a system of governance and incentive. What
Yes.
Web3 says is that this system of governance and this system of incentives should be democratized, which means we should all become the prime minister of India. As in, everybody is the prime minister of India, right? Everybody is the head of the family, everybody is the chairman of the board. In principle, it is something like that. Again, I must tell you that even I am oversimplifying it, and when you oversimplify something, you lose some of the essence. But to understand how the system of incentives work, I can give you a beautiful example. It's one of my favorite examples. Go back like to the pre-YouTube era, right? So if we wanted to watch videos or movies, we would go to a movie theater, right? The majority of the money that was being made by people who displayed the content. So the movie theater would make the majority of the money. Of course, the movie creator also did, and the movie star also did. So the exhibitors had the strength. Now, exhibitors could be physical exhibitors like movie theaters, or they could be business exhibitors such as the distributors. So if certain set of distributors were to boycott your movie is failed. So that is how
Yeah.
traditionally content has been consumed. Then came a time where YouTube got created, and we entered the world of creator economy, blogs, social media, where what started happening is that we started paying Mr. Beast, we started paying SkillArbitrage and others who created content and said, you are the creator, so you should be the ones paid. The exhibitors, oh, they are generic. You can do it on YouTube, you can do it on TikTok, Instagram, Reels, whatever else, right? So the platforms or the distributors, while still important, were not the monopolists. It is the creator economy that came in. Now,
Wonderful.
this was still Web 2. Let me tell you how Web 3 comes in.
Right.
Now, suppose, regardless of whether Shah Rukh Khan is making Jawan and it is being watched in a movie theater, or whether it's being watched on Netflix, or a review of it is posted on YouTube or whatever, it is neither the distributor nor the creator. Now, see, this is where things change. It is the consumer, the viewer. If all of us watch Jawan, it is a successful movie, regardless of what the creator made, regardless of the distributor or the exhibitor did. And if we choose not to watch it, then anybody can say whatever they want. Well, if people didn't watch, that means the real value in a content economy is created by the consumer, the viewer.
Consumers. Right.
Then why is it that YouTube pays creators but YouTube does not pay viewers? If the real value is being created by the viewers, why is YouTube not paying viewers? This is where Web3 comes in. So if there were a Web3 YouTube, there may be some initiatives, there's none that is very popular or come to mind. But what the Web3 YouTube would do is they would say that all the value is created by the viewer. So we will give all or most of the value to the consumers. This in essence is Web3. We could get into the technical aspects and the legal aspects and all, but I think that your question was also more in what is the spirit of Web3. So this is the spirit of Web3.
And how wonderfully explained. I have read that somebody, called, I think it was in Harvard Business Review, I'm not sure. Somebody said Web3, like Thanos, is inevitable. And the sort of simplicity that you explained it, and its potential applications and what it can do to the way we interact with the internet or experience being online or consume services or content and such things, it really does feel a bit inevitable, and I would say I want it to be inevitable in a way. So talking about Reflexical then, where does Reflexical come in the Web3 industry?
Okay, so if you look at entrepreneurs in the Web3 space, you could say the
Mm-hmm.
same about entrepreneurs in any space. Uh, what they need is many things, as in the ducks have to line up for great success to occur. They have to have a product that the market wants. They have to have a team that is able to deliver. They have to have money, which either comes as revenue or investment or both. They have to be at the right place at the right time. They have to have communications, etc. So I have been in the startup space since 1993, when I finished my MBA and started my own startup, and I have had played many roles. As in, I have been entrepreneur twice prior to Web3. I have been entrepreneurs twice for 6.5 years each. I've been part of Kalari Capital. I have worked with NASCOM. I have worked with variety of VC firms, Kalari Capital, 500 startups, Blockchain Founders Fund, SOSV, etc. And in all of this, I developed my belief about what causes startups to succeed. This is not yet
Mhm.
Web3. What causes startups to succeed? Then eventually, when I headed the blockchain and cryptocurrency committee, which you mentioned in the introduction, which by the way, now is not the foremost body. Now there is another one. In fact, that has been disbanded. But when I was the head, that was the foremost body. And I also developed a huge affinity to Web3. So combining both of this, after I left ZPay, which was in early 2020, I started interacting with a bunch of my friends, four different set of friends to be precise, on their projects. And this was not in the model of a consultant or an advisor or anything formal. These were friends. But what tended to happen is that I found that I could add value to them based on my experience, which at that point was roughly what, 25 years, because it was 1993 to the year 2020. So it's 26, 27 years. And I said, hey, you know what? In my belief, and of course in theirs, but more importantly in mine, I had added value. So why don't I try to add the same value to others? So between August of 20 and March of 22, I worked with several founders. This was not yet Reflexical. And this period also overlapped with a significant bull market that Web3 encountered. And March 22 was kind of towards the end of that. And I said, you know what? I think I could do this at scale. And that is where I said, I'm going to do what I have been doing, but I'm going to institutionalize it. I'm going to corporatize it. So that is where Reflexical came in. Reflexical does two things. We have the fellowship program where entrepreneurs who are setting up startups, Web3 startups, where there is a meeting of the minds. It's a fairly complex process, as in there are a lot of things that the entrepreneur has to like about us and we have to like about the entrepreneur. So there's a lot of that, but let us assume that has happened. So we come on board and we align interest with them. By align interest with them, I mean we don't charge them a fee. That means it won't be that they will not succeed, but we would have made money. But we do
Mhm.
charge a percent of the equity or token or both, such that if they do well, then they wouldn't begrudge the fact that we would also do well. And second, because I have been entrepreneur throughout, not like a guru or an advisor or any of those rather obnoxious words, actually, I decided that I wanted to set up my own ventures. And I had some things where I felt confident of pulling it off, barring availability of time. So I went ahead and I looked for co founders in those who would come in as full time co founders, while I would be a part time co founder. So this we call Reflexical Studio. So Reflexical is a Singapore incorporated company which has a fellowship program where entrepreneurs come in, where we help them grow, and it has a studio program where entrepreneurs come in as in some, let's call it a joint venture or co-founding arrangement.
Okay, very interesting sort of model there. So, during your work, working with these founders now as part of Reflexical, what kind of services or products are they building for Web3 based on this blockchain technology? What kind of startups are you mentoring? Potential
So
applications of.
you should know that working on the assumption that we are not talking to a very advanced audience right now. So I'll try to
Mhm.
keep everything simple. But since you are opening it up for people asking questions, so people who want to ask questions can ask me more advanced questions also. So very simply, I would divide all the projects or solutions being created into two parts. One would be infrastructure, and second
Mhm.
would be applications. So, infrastructure is like, for example, if somebody were creating a blockchain itself, that would be an infrastructure. Somebody would create a database structure, etc. So, there could be infrastructure, and the applications are things that are built on top of it,
Mhm.
right? So, I think that 75% of my companies that I'm working with are application companies and 25% are infra companies. So in the
Mhm.
infra space, it's best I explain this with the help of an example.
Sure.
To make democratic the governance and incentive, which I talked about right at the beginning, to
Correct.
make this happen, everything should be decentralized, right? For
Mhm.
example, if you look at democracies around the world, in most cases, you would feel when you are in any democracy in the world that the common person on the street does not have any power. But theoretically, the common person on the street should have all the power. So there's a little bit of a hypocrisy that there is this courts and there is this parliaments and there is this governments and there is this leaders and there's this political parties who seem to be ruling us. In fact, in a democracy, the term ruling party is still used.
Yeah.
So how is there a ruling party? Are we like in a monarchy? So for the purpose of us having a truly democratic setup, all power structures, resource structures, economic structures will be decentralized. Now, some of that has happened with decentralized finance, but one thing that has not happened is, let's say, decentralization in terms of where the data is stored. So let us say you
Hmm.
can do everything decentralized, but the data is on Amazon Web Services, AWS, and there's a
Yes.
government order which tells Amazon shut this down or give it to us. Then was it decentralization, right? Likewise, if I ask you, hey, do you have a phone, and you'll probably like wave something like this at me, and I'll say, no, no. Do you own a phone number? That is just the phone device. You say, of course I own a phone number, and I ask you, what is it? And you give me the number, and I say, do you own it? And you say, yeah. I say, okay, don't pay the bill for a few months and let us see if you actually owned it. Because if you
Hmm.
actually owned it, you would have it forever, right? As in, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So one of my founders is creating a decentralized database structure, which, according to me,
Okay.
is the first truly decentralized yet practical in terms of economics and technology. Another
All
one
right.
of my companies is creating a Ethereum phone number. It's called Ultimate Digit. So what they are doing, for instance, is that they give you a phone number which you own. Please note, you own. That means you of course have to pay to get it, but once you have bought it, there is no recurrent need of bill payment, etc. And basic functions you will be able to do forever, right? So now
So
that's very
interesting.
interesting, a phone number that you own. Likewise, I have, actually I could keep going on and on. There's somebody who has set up a education company. I have a one of the leading lawyers in the startup space in India who has started
Okay.
offering legal services. That is also part of my portfolio: legal, compliance, regulatory, policy, licensing services. So effectively, Reflexical, where I first described it as fellowship and studio, is
Yes.
turning out to be a digital asset group where everything
Right.
that happens in the digital space, digital asset space, is happening here. And that
Yeah.
thereby, this kind of like, there's a physics concept called stacking the balls, where you keep one ball on top of another and bounce them together. So you get a phenomenal bounce, which means synergies or
Right.
leverage.
Yes.
I am hoping that we will see a lot of that amongst reflexical companies, and some of that is already visible.
All right, that is certainly interesting. The portfolio that you just spoke about, also this G20 summit that has recently happened. So they sort of discussed the need for regulation for crypto, and also India said something about not completely banning these digital assets, but we don't know the rules yet. And then there's this, I think, a commitment in the declaration that says that by 2027, countries should start exchanging tax information regarding crypto assets. So, what I'm trying to ask you is that we've been hearing about the need for regulation on crypto. Even investors, entrepreneurs, they feel sort of unsure, uncertain because of lack of those regulations, and sort of which way the wind is going to blow. So in light of this G20 summit, could you tell us a bit more about what are those regulatory challenges that have held this technology or its application back, or its adoption back?
Okay, so what I'll do is I will try to distinguish between the digital asset, which could be called a cryptocurrency, token, whatever, fungible token, non-fungible token. So this is the digital asset, and second is the
Hmm.
technology.
Hmm.
Nobody, even the most conservative people, have not had anything negative to say about the technology. And
Right.
blockchain can work without a token in a very limited
Mm-hmm.
application, right? But
Okay.
if you want to decentralize it, it has to have its own incentive and economic system, and that requires the creation of a token. And this
Hmm.
token creates a problem, because the token becomes akin to an asset, or, as some regulators say, a financial security, which
Yes.
actually bypasses the current rules for creation of asset. For example, if I fundraise using equity, I have to
Hmm.
follow the SEBI guidelines at the public level, or the Companies Act at the private level, and then there are other guidelines like income tax, disclosure, etc. But none of
Hmm.
those exist for tokens. I shouldn't say none of those, but none of those explicitly exist for tokens, right? So
Mm-hmm.
first is that this token creates the entire problem. Also, this token is now used as some form of currency.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
currency is borderless, it is locationless, it is virtual. So, especially countries such as India, who have a lot of capital control norms, which means
Okay.
money going out of India, especially foreign exchange going out of India, is a big deal, right? And in any case, capital norms, not necessarily capital control in the form of cross border, is a issue. As in, many people have said that a country is basically its economy and its military. I say that the
Mm-hmm.
military is also based on the economy. So a country is its economy, right? So if
Mm.
something
Yes.
challenges the economy or the monetary sovereignty of a country, it is
Mm.
definitely going to hurt, right? Like people may do a
Of
lot of
course.
business and they may pay and accept payments entirely in crypto, so the taxman may not even know what has happened. So these are
Correct.
some of the concerns that come in. Also, issues of consumer protection.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the crypto space, decries the government's interference in crypto, right? Oh,
Yeah.
why is there tax? Oh, why is there KYC? Oh, why is there PAN card, Aadhaar card, all of that, right? But anytime there's a scam, anytime somebody runs away,
Mm-hmm.
they go to the government and say, get my money back. So they're like, hey, hold on. As long as I'm going to make money, I don't want your regulation. I want complete democratic assertion of the individual. But when scams happen, which has happened quite a lot, they want government protection. So this will
Right.
have to reach a point of, a static point where we agree as to how much of the joy and benefits of a decentralized economy are we willing to sacrifice. If this is too much of a sacrifice, then frankly there'll be no purpose of having this. I'll give you an example. 2000 and, if I'm not mistaken, 19, it became
Yeah.
possible in Singapore under the regulator called the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which, unlike what you see in many economies, they have a unified regulator. That means they don't have a separate banking regulator and a securities regulator and insurance. They have like one, which is called the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So,
Okay.
under the purview and guidelines of Monetary Authority of Singapore, you could issue security tokens. That means cryptocurrencies which declare themselves to be securities, and they can come up with an issuance publicly. Now,
All
the
right.
interesting thing is that I know somebody who tried to go down that path, and the lawyer fees, compliance fees, filing fees, etc., were to the tune of 500,000 Sing, that is 500,000 Singapore dollar, which, by the
Okay.
way, is almost exactly the same as coming up with a stock IPO, right?
Oh
So
my
that
God.
means regardless
Yes.
of whether you wanted to issue a equity security or a token
Mm.
security, the fees were the same and the processes looked very similar, right?
Right.
And
Right.
people, so obviously, either nobody, but I can't be sure of that, but hardly anybody must have taken part in that, because there is a joy of the frictionlessness of a purely digital setup. But now you put in the same hurdles and deliberately introduce friction, right? So, where will all
Yeah.
this come to a stable point? Unclear, but it is getting there.
Yeah. But I sure hope so. um. Hi, Ajeet. Okay. Right.
No,
You're
there
back.
much here. I
All right. I won't worry now. Um. Okay. So talking again about this Web3 industry, as you yourself said, up until March 2022, it was a good time for Web3 startups when it came to interest from investors, the investor backing. And in 2022, I think up until now, there haven't been any major news or any major breakthroughs. And it's the same is going to continue for the upcoming quarter, also, they're saying. So, where do you see a pickup happening in funding or backing for these Web3
So
startups?
I'm going to tell you something which, because everything is recorded, right? Even this is going to be recorded.
And
So
it's
a few
live.
years down, yeah, yeah. So a few years down the line, this could be serious egg on my face, and I could be eating crow. But I have to, at the same time, I don't want to, like I always say that if you ask somebody an important question, the correct answer is it depends.
True.
To every question, the correct answer, it depends. But it is, while being completely accurate, it is also the least helpful answer, right? So
Definitely.
if you try to take a position, you will probably have, lost some nuance, but you can try to help somebody. So I'm going to like stick my neck out and actually answer that question. In my
Okay. And let's
lifespan,
hope
like,
this age as well.
oh, by the way, even if it doesn't, it is
Mm.
my opinion at this point. So that is true.
True that.
So
That is
regardless
very
of
true.
whether my opinions have often turned out to be wrong, which is like a disclaimer here, but in my lifetime, and I was born in 1970, so I'm like 53 plus years old. uh, I have seen several industries, all of them digital, or digital related to digital, which have grown 1,000-fold, not 1,000%. 1,000-fold is like 100,000% in the
Right.
period of a decade. So this came about probably with things like e-commerce, social media, uh, wearable bands, digital bands, mobile gaming, and a bunch of others. Some others that did not grow thousandfold, though they showed promise, were probably like drones,
Mm,
other variables other than the wristband, etc.
mm,
So there have been industries which we have seen in our lifetime which have grown 1,000 times in a 10-year period, right? Traditional industries like pharmaceuticals, airlines, consumer products, in most cases, though not all, probably cannot show that growth. Maybe laptops or computers may have shown us very high growth. In my opinion, Web3 is the next industry to grow thousandfold in a decade. And now this is me sticking my neck out for no reason, as in why volunteer one's neck, but it is my opinion that this 10-year period started in 2020, maybe
mm-hmm,
21. That
mm-hmm,
means we are already in year three, and year three is worse than year two, probably compared with year one or even worse. So, this sounds as in if somebody has been an industry observer, they might find it laughable. But any industry which has grown thousandfold in a decade did not grow linearly, right? As in there were ups and downs. So, we are certainly facing a down. We are facing a bear market when it comes to asset pricing. We are not facing a bear market when it comes to the technology. And I still believe that if you look at what was happening in 2020, in all of these protocols and stuff, 1,000-fold growth will have happened by 2030. It is my belief. Now micro movements in the market,
mm-hmm,
the Jerome Powell, is heading the Federal Reserve in the US, and what he does to interest rates, which luckily did not increase yesterday, day before. Those things make a very big impact, right? And I have absolutely no skill set or even opinion. If you still force me, I would say that latest by mid 25 we should see something positive, though it could happen much sooner. But again, that is not something I say with a high degree of conviction. What I can say with a
mm-hmm.
high degree of conviction is that the graph is upswinging and we are currently at a low point.
Definitely, I agree with you on that because I have been reading things. Like I said, I am no authority. I've tried my best to understand this before I could speak with you. So I have read reports that in some major surveys done across companies, across various industries, a lot of participants, 56 of these participants are very confident about adopting blockchain technology in their offerings, or as an infrastructure to build their offering upon. A little bit of more percentage is confused, but it's there. So there's an upswing in how many people want to adopt it. One, then there are certain projections that do say that around 2025 onwards to 2030, the market for Web3 would be anywhere between 40 billion to 200 billion US dollars. So certainly, even though we are seeing a downturn, but a lot of people, their opinions, the market buzz around it, what the regulatory authorities discussing about it, I do feel it's not over yet. It's really not. And speaking of it's not over yet, I want to talk about hiring challenges. Are there hiring challenges in Web3 industries? What are they, if yes?
So if you look at the entire skill portfolio of Web3, when the market suddenly started growing very fast in 2020, people were not available, right? People were just not available. And there were three drivers of this. First, a lot of the developers who could have made themselves available were a little worried that this might be a flash in the pan, so they did not want to change their career path to this, right?
Okay.
Second is that a lot of these technologies were relatively new, and especially the more senior guys would have to invest time and effort in skilling themselves, as opposed to a fresher who would have to skill themselves in any case, so they could skill themselves here. but the more senior guys were skilled already and they would have to change their path. Number three was that the requirement for talent shot up like crazily enough. So in that phase, the problem that arose was that everybody was junior. We did not have much senior talent. Second was that because of the nature of this technology, which by the way is not very difficult in terms of writing programs, what are called smart contracts, because most of it is open source and you can see each other's code, right? So
Okay.
it is a exam where everybody can read everybody else's answer paper, if you may allow me again an oversimplification. And the third crazy thing that happened is that lots of these projects raised lots of money and were willing to give a lot of salary, remuneration, compensation to employees. That caused a gold rush. So people
Oh.
with relatively lower experience were earning many multiples in Web3 by the end of 2020 and mid of 2021 than their counterparts were doing who had not come here. So this led to the opposite problem, that by the latter part of 2021, while job scene was pretty good, but the deluge of people coming in, having done some short program somewhere, some online course which they did in 5 days or whatever else, were all presenting themselves as candidates and companies had no choice. Now suddenly we reached the bear market, which started in around March of 22. Bear market does not mean that companies fire right away, but
Mhm.
since then, the reverse problem has been happening, that more and more and more companies, as is true about all of the tech space, not just Web3, have been letting employees go. And when they are
Mhm.
letting employees go, the most expensive talent, like the CPO, Chief Product Officer, is one of the first to let go, while they are
Hmm.
actually good. So the most expensive talent, some senior talent who is not in ownership position, like a co-founder, some very junior talent, or some people who are sitting on the bench were let go. Now this has been taking place for about a year and a half. So
Okay.
the curve always bends. So now we are at the other inflection point where I find a lot of founders who had just entered Web3. Sorry, not founders, developers and employees and talent and skill who had just entered Web3 exactly at the wrong time. As in, they joined and the market collapsed. So these people have sworn off Web3 and they're saying Web3 is dead, Web3 is whatever, as in not charitable things to say. So we are once again starting to face a dearth of talent in Web3. But this dearth, which is the end 2023 dearth, is very different than the end 2020 dearth, because at that point of time, the money was in abundance, right? So you could pick
Hmm.
up your whatever career you were doing and get into Solidity or whatever else you were doing in Web3 and demand two, three, four times the salary.
Right.
But now people want to pay the same salary. That means if you are getting 1x, I'll give you 1x, but you have to still work here. So the
Hmm.
positions exist, but the salaries are not as juicy as they once were. So to attract talent without giving a significant economic opportunity is a challenge. Luckily for the Web3 industry, unluckily for most, the rest of the tech world is also facing a challenge with Facebook, Google, everybody laying off people, right?
Hmm.
As a result, talent has become available. I find that the quality of talent, this is not a quality of any one individual, but as a pool of Web3 talent, currently we are facing quantitatively a dearth, but qualitatively we are finding far better talent than we were finding 2 or 3 years ago, right?
Oh,
Where people
okay.
could do like one thing, but they couldn't do much. Now, because the industry has matured for a couple of years, we are finding
Hmm.
reasonable talent. Having said all of this, the conclusion is that countries like India, which would include Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Philippines, and the like, still are charging far lower or are paying far lower for domestic talent than the Western world is paying. Slightly better than the region I told you would be the Eastern European region, and the Western
Hmm.
European region and the US would be still higher. And given that we have gone through our work from home for COVID, the cross
Hmm.
border opportunities are very significant. And
Right.
in principle, Web3 is decentralized, so a lot of talent from these territories is finding very rewarding career opportunities in remote working setups.
Wonderful. That's another one of those things that about Web3, that it stands to impart benefit to this industry, both to employers and employees, in terms of finding Yeah, remote work really has made that possible, and that is another Web3 feature. Again, I wanted to ask, so much is happening in the market. Industry has matured a bit. Funding tha, now funding is a bit low. We're finding ways to sustain ourselves without shutting down our operations. So, in spite of these challenges, these ups and downs, the consulting that you do, or the support that you provide to Web3 startups, what are those strategies and approaches that you employ that help you cater to these startups well?
So what I'll do is I'll answer it in a broad way, and then you can ask me a more narrow question if you like. But the reason I'm answering it in a
Sure.
broad way is to remain at the theme of this session also, because I will
Mhm.
answer it in a way that I use, as well as prospective people who are trying to make a career in Web3 can also make.
Yes,
Now, here's
sure.
the thing. Why does a person seek employment or career or business opportunity? I could just break it up into two buckets. One is a financial reward, and second
Mhm.
is everything else, right?
Mhm.
Now, financial reward, why do we need financial reward? Fundamentally, you have got to lead a lifestyle, you got to earn a living, you got to have your bread and butter. And so that is like the bare minimum, the physiological needs, the pay for my children's education or parents' medicine or whatever else. But
Mhm.
then you also want to feel remunerated. You want to feel appreciated, which is why, while I might be able to survive with X dollars a month, I seek to make 2x, 3x, 4x, 10x, right? So, if indeed what I said applies to your case, and this, by the way, is how Reflexical also operates, and prospective employees, not of Reflexical, but of Web3 can operate. You could do this, you could make it easy upon the organization and charge only the X or a lower number and say, you know what, reward me for the rest of what I deserve in your ownership units. So if you look at
Mhm.
the latter part of the 90s, when the dot-com boom happened, this
Mhm.
happened with employees getting stock options, which,
Right.
and there are some very successful stories of people becoming very rich, like Narayan Murthy's driver became a millionaire, and those sort of stories I've never explored to find out whether they're actually truth, but you understand what I'm talking about. The same delicious, extremely juicy opportunities exist today in Web3. So if your employer could pay you in, let us say, their ownership units, which could be equity, but it could also be tokens, right? I think that as long as the fixed fee that you're getting is rewarding enough, remunerative enough for you, I think that you could definitely look for a significant upward spike in your remuneration if the project does well, if the token gets listed, and you are able to exit. Now, to answer your question in more specificity, because you asked about Reflexical, so we actually go a step further. What we do is, because see, we have a team, we attend events, we travel, we do a bunch of things. Where does the money for all this come from? We don't charge our customers anything. We don't take anything from them. We don't charge them a fee, consulting fee, advisory fee, etc. We actually take only those ownership units that I talked about, token, equity, etc. Now, what this does is, at the time when the startup really is strapped for cash, while it may be very promising and they can't pay you, you have come as a godsend to them, because you said, I'll give you all of what I would have given you, but not charge you a dollar fee or a fiat fee. And
Mhm.
at the time when they will actually be able to harvest this relationship and actually create value, market value out of it, at that time you will be able to exit this position. When it comes to tokens as opposed to equity, there is one additional benefit. That in equity, you may be holding your equity, you may not get an exit opportunity. So I'm holding stock in SkillArbitrage. You'll give me stock, right, for doing this session? Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
holding stock. You could, right? You're thinking,
Yes.
oh, maybe, I will get it. He's like, oh, where is my stock? Yeah, but anyway,
Idea बुरा नहीं है. Yes.
idea बुरा नहीं है, like, yeah. So,
Yes.
so suppose I have that also, and now it's valuable, but where do I sell it? In the case of token, the secondary market arises sooner or later. So in light of that, I think that employees are facing a very good opportunity where they fulfill the requirement of the project, the company, the startup, by asking for zero. Zero is not really possible for employees, so less, but getting the rest of the reward in the tokens. Reflexical also works the same way. Reflexical does not take a retainer or a consulting fee or an advisory fee at all. We take zero. Your question
Mhm.
could be, then how do we survive? Oh, very simple. It's kind of the obvious thing. We actually fundraised for Reflexical itself. I have 92
Oh,
investors. So people
okay.
have invested. So our operations are supported by our investors' money, right?
Oh,
And
wonderful.
then when we will make those extraordinary return from our holding in the various startups, etc., that is how our investors will get the return.
That is wonderful. That's again a very interesting model of operating.
Yes, you are now on my list. When I'm raising my next round, I'll want Rishita to invest in Reflexical. Always be selling, right? That's what an entrepreneur is supposed to do.
Sure, I'll take your advice to heart though. Ki when you want to fundraise from me for Reflexical, remember you said, ki, okay, don't reward me in money or salary, reward me in other ways.
Absolutely. See, you. This is why you are so good at this because you learn so fast.
Yeah, I'm creating myself a job opportunity. That's what I'm
Uh,
doing.
Absolutely. I'm currently conducting a job interview, so I think we are both on in sync. Ooh.
I hope my manager is not watching this. Moving on. Uh, and all right, so we are towards the last leg of our video. Anyways, I'm having fun so far, but we'll wrap this up with one last question I have for you, which I ask every mentor or anybody who's gone through that journey. That what would you advise budding entrepreneurs who are thinking of getting in the Web3 space to prepare themselves for and prepare themselves in?
So I will give advice to entrepreneurs, then I will give some specific advice to Web3 entrepreneurs because frankly, Web3
Sure,
entrepreneurs are also entrepreneurs. Okay, so
of
first
course,
they are
yes.
entrepreneurs. First and foremost, we are all a product of the times we live in. Like as a humankind, maybe if somebody was born 200 years ago as opposed to now, their thinking would be very different. As an entrepreneur, our thinking is very driven by the current state of the market. Like if you were trying to be a Web3 entrepreneur 2 years ago, so we were now
Mm-hmm.
in the latter part of 21 and the market was frothy, bubbling, euphoric, your entire thinking would be different, right? But ultimately, the first principles of business will always hold. You have to create a startup which creates value. Many of you will feel that what you're thinking creates value. Not enough. You have to create a startup which is sufficiently differentiated. Otherwise, if everybody is creating the same value, nothing much will come out of it. This is where a lot of founders fail, especially Web3 founders. Like if you look at a lot of successful projects that came in 2021, they were
Mm-hmm.
good projects but undifferentiated.
Okay.
And now this is the amazing part, which is where even greater failure occurs. You may be creating value, good. You may be differentiated, oh, already fantastic. But how will you get adoption? How will you get
Mm-hmm.
people to, like, suppose you tell people have a MetaMask wallet and do this, and here are your private keys, this is blockchain, and people are like, wait a second, I didn't realize I have to be a scientist to use your application or a techie to
Yeah.
be. So make it easy. And unlike your predecessors, who we today refer to as Web2 founders, what's very interesting is that we did not use the term Web 2 until Web 3 came along. So
Yeah.
Web 3 created the term Web 2. But because your predecessors have created very, very friendly products, like if you use the Cred app, Kunal Shah's Cred app, the Paytm
Yes.
app, the Amazon app, the whatever Facebook app, the Twitter app, or whatever else, they're very usable and value gets created in very little amount of learning. Make sure that you're creating a way in which people can adopt. Create value, differentiate yourself, and focus on entirely on acquisition. I think this is my general advice, and all the more so for Web3 people. uh, for Web3, I would just say this, that there is a lot of sloganeering going on, there's a lot of jingoism, and people somehow feel that
Mm.
if they say crypto or Web3, they create a Telegram community, WhatsApp community, do parties, meetups, that somehow is business. That is not business. That
Yeah.
unfortunately is one of the things that I see happening quite a lot. But you
Mm-hmm.
will do business, you will sustain in business, you will give return to investors only if you are sustainably delivering value.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you so much for that. I just saw that we have a comment, a query in the comment section. So let's just get to it. This is interesting. So this person, the commenter, wants to know, Rudresh, how will they solve the support issues in their products if a user faces any issues? Who does the user contact? So basically, I think he's trying to ask, in this kind of technology, this kind of offerings, if the user, like we just spoke, if this was jargon, it feels too technical. So if, when we face these, do you have at Reflexible maybe built a customer support or customer success?
No, no. If I may get what Rudresh is talking about, see what happens in a decentralized setup as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
Paytm. So he will not ask if we have a problem with Paytm, who do we contact? Because you'll contact Paytm. If you have a problem with
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, you'll write to support
Mm-hmm.
at Amazon. But
Mm-hmm.
if it is a decentralized setup, which means there is no
Right.
organization, there is a smart contract that is running all by itself, who do you contact?
Mm-hmm.
I will
Right.
answer that with an
True.
analogy. Very common email services that we use, such as Gmail, for example, is all built upon a technology called SMTP. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So, what we are doing with Gmail and other things is these are user interfaces built on top of that protocol called SMTP.
Okay.
Question
Yes.
for Rishita as well as Rudresh, who both coincidentally have 7 letter name starting with the letter R.
Oh,
Amazing, right? Yeah. So
yes.
the
That you
question is,
noticed.
yes, if you have a problem with Gmail, you can write a support to Gmail. But if you have a problem with SMTP, who is the owner of SMTP? The answer is really nobody. It is a protocol that
Yes.
evolved collaboratively. So
Yeah.
at this point of time, all projects, barring Bitcoin, where we don't know the founder, there's this supposed guy, person, people, male, female, called Satoshi Nakamoto. But if we ignore that,
Yes.
whether it's Ethereum or any other, there was a foundation or a set of people or a DAO which created that and took it to
Okay.
a point where they were able to respond to the community. So
Mm-hmm.
Rudresh, the answer is, in the perfect world, there won't be these support issues. In a slightly imperfect world, the community will come to your rescue when you will go to community boards and seek redressal. In a still less perfect world, there'll be a DAO or a setup that is actually doing this. For example, if you take the Cardano setup, there is a commercial end, there is a development end, and there is a research end. So the development end would give you research. And in a fairly imperfect world of Web3, which is kind of where we are, Web3 startups are actually running like startups. They have their own customer support. You can write to somebody and stuff, which does beg the question that how are they decentralized? The fact is they are not. They are headed in the direction of decentralization, but they aren't yet.
All right. Thank you, Rudresh, for that question. Thanks, Ajit, for addressing it. I hope that's clear to you, Rudresh. And I had fun, definitely. I now understand Web3 a little better and what's happening a little better than I did an hour ago. So, thank you so much for being here and being so generous with your answers and so patient and for simplifying it down, breaking it down
Thank you
for
very
us.
much for having me here. If this is posted on YouTube, etc., and you put questions on this even after this is over, I will try my best to come and give responses so that this session is most valuable to you. Thank you for having me.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. So that was Ajeet Khurana, and we had a lovely discussion about Web3, a very frank discussion, may I say. And this is the Skill Arbitrage YouTube channel. On every Thursday at 8 p.m., we have similar conversations with entrepreneurs. So wrapping it up, I am Rishita. Good night. Thank you. Thanks, Ajeet. Bye.
Bye.